welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on Africa's largest TV network. We're live, and this morning on Good Morning Nigeria, our focus is on the National Livestock Transformation Plan, and our correspondent Serafina Okon has put together this background report that will lay the foundation for our discussion this morning.
In the past, Nigeria has had its share of conflicts between farmers and herders, with attendant loss of lives and threats to food security. To put an end to the ugly trend, the National Economic Council earlier this year approved the National Livestock Transformation Plan, NLTP, to address the farmer-herder crisis in the country. The program is built on 6 key pillars of economic investments: conflict resolution, law and order, humanitarian relief, information education, strategic communication, and other issues. The plan is targeted at supporting the development of Nigeria's livestock sector. It is to be implemented in 7 pilot states of Adamawa, Benue, Kaduna, Plateau, Nasarawa, Taraba, and Zamfara. Vice President Professor Yemi Oshibanjo, who chairs the National Economic Council, said the plan is designed to run from 2019 to 2028 as a federal government initiative in collaboration with some state governments. Already, the Northern State Governors has adopted the National Livestock Transformation Plan, describing it as a defined pathway for modernizing pastoral activities. The NLTP is specifically designed to strengthen and support livestock sector for improved productivity, pasture production, efficient land and water utilization, to ensure livestock management as an economic and socio-cultural activity. Nigeria has huge potential in the livestock sector, begging to be tapped to provide a chain of economic activities that would bring about the much-needed diversification from petroleum. And that is why many see the National Livestock Transformation Plan as one that would galvanize the economy. How will the NLTP strengthen livestock business in Nigeria? To what extent will it enhance livestock management? What are the benefits for states willing to participate? And what economic potential does the plan hold for the nation? These questions and more will engage guests on the program Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
Thank you, Serafina, for that background report. And joining us in the studio this morning to discuss this very important topic. First, I have Dr. Andrew Kwasare. Dr. Kwasare is the Senior Policy Advisor, Office of the Vice President. We thank you for coming.
Thank you, Kenan.
And also here with us in the Abuja studio is Baba Usman. Baba Usman is Secretary General, Mayor Tiala Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And also we have in our studio Professor Ambrose Vaughan. He's the Chairman of Adamawa Livestock Transformation Office of the National Livestock Transformation Plan. He's also former Executive Director, National Animal Production Research Institute. Thank you for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And also it's our pleasure to welcome to our studios Kabir Ibrahim, National President, All Farmers Association of Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
And gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you join us this morning to discuss this issue. But I'd like to begin this discussion with Dr. Andrew Kwasare, who's a Senior Special Assistant to the President, Office of the Vice President on policy. But first of all, let's begin this way. We had the Ruga, which was immersed in all sorts of controversies as to how, where, lots of issue trailed that, and of course that was suspended. And now we have the National Livestock Transformation Plan. What is the National Livestock Transformation Plan about? What is the difference between this and Ruga?
Thank you for having me. First of all, point of a bit of correction that the Senior Special Assistant on Agriculture to the President, Office of the Vice President. Well, so the National Livestock Transformation Plan, it's quite different on the fact that this is a holistic approach that attempts to address all of the associated problems to the farmer-header conflict, modernization of the livestock industry, involvement of the local communities to also resettle the displaced people as a result of the conflict, dealing with the issue that are related to climate change, how do we use our available land, and it's basically to be implemented at the state level, involving all of the stakeholders to settle pastoralists within gazetted grazing reserves without also displacing crop farmers that are within the gazetted grazing reserve. The Ruga policy or settlement plan, as you said, was suspended by Mr. President himself, which was the right move because it also isolates only one part of the problem. So I think this holistic approach to deal with all of the issues differentiates Ruga from NLTP. One. Secondly, the NLTP needs a 10-year period so that gradually we can transform the livestock sector and transform also how this conflict is dealt with. To the best of my knowledge, the Ruga was meant to be a 4-month plan, and I don't know how that would have addressed the issues that we are facing today. And the fact that also extensive consultation have gone into developing the National Livestock Transformation Plan, with 10 governors and 2 ministers visiting various communities in over 18 months to understand what the problems are and how to deal with it. So this all-inclusive, bottom-top approach sets the NLTP also apart from any other intervention, because then it takes into consideration all of the aspiration of the common man, the pastoralists, the crop farmers, the displaced communities, and all of it, the traditional rulers, women, youths, all of it, to say, okay, this is the way we should go as a people and as a country.
Well, in the course of this conversation, you will likely give us a clearer picture of what you mean by taking care of all the expected encumbrances, would have been with Ruga or ranching, as the case may be, because if you do not differentiate these specifics, Nigerians will not understand exactly what you mean by saying that Ruga, ranching, that are different from the new initiative. But we're talking about settling the headers. We're talking about infrastructure. We're talking about security. We're talking about providing grazing space, for the headers. Now, let me turn to Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders Association Secretary General. All of these initiatives are meant to ensure that members of your association are properly taken care of in a good environment, in an agricultural business space that will operate effectively and efficiently, and of course cohabit with the various communities, that are going to be neighboring them. Now, in all of this, what is the take of Mieti Allah in all of this? Which would you like? Are you alluding to the current initiative, or would it have been better, to, of course, bring in Ruga or ranching, or something that would be perhaps, all of that in one package?
To begin with, I would like to first of all appreciate the office of Mr. Kosari, and for those members of the committee that have come up and worked to come up with the document. This is a document that has addressed the whole issues. We have taken part in most of the preliminary stage of the document. We are involved. This is a document that we believe can solve the problem if implemented fully. And I would like also to appreciate the Northern governors for recognizing the importance of the document and adopting it. Because if this document is adopted, I am sure it is going to solve the farmer cattle breeder conflict that has lingered for long in this country. The document, as we see it, has addressed the entire issues of the farmer pastoralist crisis, though there are some gray areas as it relates to the implementation that we have to address. But the document as it is now is okay. For the Ruga, we were not part of Ruga preparations. We don't know much about the Ruga arrangement because as a pastoralist umbrella body, we were not involved in the setting up of the Ruga concept. So we don't know much about Ruga. Well, it has been suspended now, so we have no much problem about that. But for the livestock transformation plan, this is a document that complements the ranches and the grazing reserves. You know, the two have to move together because if you say ranching alone, the pastoralists we have in the country, there are those that still practice the primitive system of animal husbandry they inherited from their forefathers. So ranching has to come as a process. So because this document is addressing both the ranching and the grazing reserve, so it's a document that we believe can solve the problem. Because if those that are captured in the ranches are there in the ranch, what of the other smallholder farmers who are surrounding the ranch? So this document has addressed all these issues. It has addressed the problem of the smallholder farmers who will be around the ranch, living in the grazing reserve, and also addressing the issues of those that are captured in the grazing reserve as a model for the others to continue to see and emulate in the process of doing their livestock business. And with time, they will begin to learn to also adopt to the ranching model. The reason why they say ranching now is an alien concept. They don't know it. And it didn't address the peculiar nature of the pastoralists we have in the country. But this Ruga settlement, because it is carrying both the ranching and the other aspects, so for the other smallholder farmers will also be there around the ranching model that was established within the reserve to be seen what those in the ranch are doing. So they will be learning by example. So after a 10-year period, I'm sure with effective implementing of this concept, after a 10-year period, the entire smallholder farmers around that ranch must have learned to understand the benefits of ranching, of what ranching can do for them by transforming the species of their cows from the outdated breeds that they have to an exotic ones that can give much output of meat and milk. And a lot of their skills will be improved. They will be trained. Their capacities will be improved. So many other things. If you look at the human capacity development pillar of the plan, because the plan has 6 pillars, I'm sure Dr. Andrew can elaborate more on the pillars. So if you look at the human capital development pillar, this pillar in particular is a welcome development because it has addressed the educational and support of the sector, of the livestock subsector. It has also addressed the education of the herders as well as the system of improving their capacity as well as training them and improving their skills in so many other things. And even when I went through the report, it's even talking about linkages to the N-Power program. But that of the N-Power, it has to be disaggregated to integrate those with lower level of education, more especially in those that are involved in the animal husbandry business. So if you look at the plan, it's a plan that has captured all the desires of the Nigerian pastoralists, because all that we have been arguing all this while is there hasn't been a concept that has squarely addressed these issues, because the pastoralists we have in the country are those that are still engaged in primitive system of animal husbandry. No attempt is being made to improve their skills in order to appreciate ranching. It's not that we don't like ranching. We like it because with the growing population of the country, with all these factors of climate change and what have you, pastoralists must settle, even in the northern part of the country where they belong. Because in 10, 20 years to come, it may not be possible for this movement looking for free pasture because of the growing population and the enormous demand on land. And with all these factors of climate change and what have you, that is having enormous demand on the land as well. So with this, there has to be a system of settlement of the pastoralists. This has been our desire, whatever concept you give it, whatever name you call it, whether Ruga, whether livestock, whether, our desire is let's begin to settle these people in an atmosphere where they can coexist with their crop farmers so that we can have a lasting peace. And this document, Livestock Transformation Plan, is all about this. We have gone through the plan, it's okay. Well, only that those states that are going to implement it, we have to hold them accountable for the process, because we fear a situation where the money will be diverted for other things. So we'll be watching, we'll be part of everything. There has to be an implementation structure, there has to be an implementation process, because as it is now, the implementation process is cloudy. We don't know it. It has to involve key stakeholders like AFAN and Magban to be part of the implementation process as well.
Baba Glazama, we'll come back to you. These issues that you have raised are the issues we intend to actually, take a closer look at, the challenges of the National Livestock Transformation Plan and how, these challenges can be surmounted by every one of us. But then let's bring in Professor Ambrose Vaughan, who's the chairman of the Adamawa State Livestock Transformation Office. Let's get your take on this. Speak to us on what you think this is all about and what you think it intends to achieve. And if you have any contrary opinion, let us know.
Thank you very much. Like the name implies, it's a National Livestock Transformation Plan.
Okay.
Transformation is actually a change, a marked change. What are we transforming here? We are transforming the livestock production ecosystem. Transforming from what to what? The present livestock production system we operate is a livestock production system that is mobile. Okay. Nomadism and transhumance. Okay? That brings about movement from place to place. And of course that movement is in search of inputs that are necessary for livestock production. And the key one here is forage, or pastures, and water. That is what the herdsmen move about in search for. So we are saying, okay, instead of that, which is prone to several things, is prone to crisis, like we are experiencing, is prone to transboundary disease transmission, and low production, because what is gained when the animals move down south, for instance, is also lost when they move up north. So we are saying, instead of this mobile system, let us sedentarize. Let us stay in one place. Produce these animals better. They can have better access to improved production technologies that have been generated through research. And to do that, will require that you sedentarize, that they remain in one place. But of course, for them to remain in one place, you must provide the inputs or those attributes for which they move about, which is largely forage and water. Now, to do that, you will require certain factors in livestock production, key amongst which is land. It's land and access to finance. Now, looking at the issue of land, we now said, okay, if you are going to sedentarize and land is a factor, how do you address that land factor? And the easiest thing we now looked at in that NLTP policy or program is the existing grazing reserves. Gazetted grazing reserves. They've already been gazetted and have been identified for the purpose of grazing. So that provides the land and addresses one of the key factors of production for livestock. Now, it interests you to know that in this country we have about 415 grazing reserves in the country. 415.
Are they operational?
Yes. 415, and they provide a total land size of about 4 million hectares. That is huge. So you already have an aspect that addresses that issue. And it is gazetted. And because it is gazetted, it has been put into law for that function. Now we say, okay, let us use that for this change, for this sedentarization. And that is exactly what the National Livestock Transformation Plan 2019 to 2028 is all about. Sedentarization, using grazing reserves as the source of land for the livestock production system.
Okay, well, we're going to get to that because after all said and done, we're talking about feed. If you settle cattle in a particular place, they have to be fed. Yes. And we're going to also look at the source of the feed for the cattle when finally settled. Because what we're discussing here clearly indicates the fact that we want to begin to settle our herders, not to be nomadic for life, because the current situation cannot allow that to continue. Let's turn to the president of the All Farmers Association of Nigeria, and that's Kabir Ibrahim. We were told by the vice president aide here that all the stakeholders were involved in articulating this policy. Of course, that would make all of us believe that farmers have been were captured, you know. Are there components of this initiative that have taken care of your members?
Well, let me correct a notion that there is a difference between the pastoralists and crop farmers when it relates to AFAN. They are both our members. And we have done a lot of work even before now with the Miati Allah. We addressed press conferences and all that. That put aside now. What is happening in Nigeria, the NLTP and even Ruga and the farmer-herder conflict and all that is a situation that arose from the injustice that some people feel was being meted unto them. Mostly the pastoralists. The essence of both of these programs is to ensure that the conflict sprouting from that is mitigated. And then again, this program, the transformation program, has brought out something that is very unique that should have been the reason for it to come. That is transforming the livestock sector to effectively affect the economy. What we get now in beef and milk is largely from the pastoralists. And that is not the best that we can have. The performance of the cattle held by the pastoralists is very poor in terms of milk and meat. So, but when you look at the essence of this program, it allows for improvement in terms of the herd and in terms of for milk and meat. To be able to do that, you need somebody to produce fodder. You can tie up the relationship between the farmers or the crop farmers and the pastoralists by making those crop farmers to also appreciate that they can make good money in producing fodder. To that extent, a lot of work has gone on, and the Mieti Allah and the pastoralists and the crop farmers, or all farmers, came together at one point, initiated by the SA. We had a program here in Abuja where the Glendale, the Kringindale Institute came to educate us on conflict resolution. We sat down together with Mark Ban for a week and arrived at so many reasons why we shouldn't be fighting each other. And that is a very good step in the right direction. So crop farmers are deeply involved in this, and I believe it will bring respite to the conflict. Conflicts will be no more if this is properly implemented. But the implementation is where we have some, reservations. When the federal government will award maybe contracts and things like that in developing this program, the tendency is that a lot of the stakeholders will be alienated.
How do you?
Well, you can imagine that the Met Allah said they didn't know anything about the Ruga. And the Ruga is supposed to sedentarize the pastoralists.
Did he say?
Yes, he said it in this
Well,
program.
what he, if I get here, what he said was that in the process of putting together the document for Ruga, they weren't consulted, not because they didn't know about it, but their input wasn't. Did I get that right? Their input wasn't. They were not consulted, yes. Not that they were not aware of it, but that they were not consulted for that document that was put together for Ruga, unlike the National Livestock Transformation Plan. But I'll get back to you. I'd like Dr. Kwasali to speak to us on the pillars of the National Livestock Transformation Plan. Before we begin to look at the implementation or how, all of this would be implemented, the states that are involved, talk to us about the pillars. What should we know about it? How important is, how does it capture everybody?
Thank you very much. So we have 6 pillars. 5 of the pillars are what we call enabling pillars, and they all revolve around how do we solve the humanitarian crisis that has emerged, humanitarian economic crisis that have emerged from the conflict. So from basically having infrastructure at the state level to deal with conflict resolution, to deal with justice and peace, to deal with humanitarian relief, to deal with human capital development, as Mieti Allah, National Secretary, mentioned. And then we have a whole pillar on cross-cutting issues that deals with research, that deals with youth, gender, how do we involve women, how is nutrition a more needed area to concentrate on, or our food security pursuit should center around nutrition security. And then overall, we then have the 6th pillar, which is the economic investment, where we will now need to deal with the issues of modernizing livestock production system. In that, the approach of the plan is take a portion of a particular location and build model ranches or pilot ranches for 4 categories of them in a cluster. For ranching, for 30 cows, for 60 cows, for 150 cows, and for 300 cows. And these numbers were not arbitrarily decided. We consulted with the pastoralists, and we realized that the herders, with the herds they move with today, fall into one of these categories. Majority, 70%. There could be some with more, 1,000, 2,000, but there are few. And most of these large holdings have settled to some extent on private estates. So the guys that move around, 70% of them are taken care of if we can build such type of ranches. And then to provide also on this 6th pillar some non-ranching support, just to understand how it works. Because once you build model pilots, ranches, 4 of them in a cluster, we then need to ask the pastoralists to contribute their cattle as equity to join the piloting. Then you must keep the others as free-range pastoralists within the gazetted grazing reserve so that they can observe what their brothers are doing. And once they like it, then the issue that Professor talked about, then how do you now manage the land within the gazetted grazing reserve? And these pillars are all linked one onto another. When the Vice President visited Gongoshi, the first thing we did with the Adamawa team is, okay, we have now known that there's Gongoshi with 9,600 hectares of land. You cannot start any intervention until you enumerate. And that is where the issue of implementation comes. So they went in there, they enumerated and counted 772 pastoral families and 190 crop farming families within that space. Now, you have to build a specific target for these people within there. So, but overall, the 5 pillars that are enabling has to happen as you plan to ranch, because you will not ranch in an atmosphere of chaos and disharmony. So all of these humanitarian pillars that deal with conflict resolution, justice and peace, human capital development, cross-cutting issues, and all of these are meant to solve the problems that the communities told us when we visited them, that these are what we are facing today. Without addressing them, you cannot just fall from heaven and say you want to start to teach pastoralists how to ranch, how to do this. We have to solve the underlying situation that has been created by the conflict and the neglect over decades of years.
Yeah, because, invariably, for you to take a portion of land, some might be the lands being planted upon by farmers, the crop farmers, for instance. So it has to be negotiated before you take it. Fine and good.
No,
and I think...
we are not taking. So what the governors decided, this policy came out from National Economic Council. What the governors decided is that, yes, the gazetted grazing reserve said the land is for livestock production. But as it is today, a lot of this land has been encroached upon by crop farmers. Crop farmers that are from the community as they expand in need of farm. Crop farmers that hitherto were pastoralists that own cattle but have lost their cattle to cattle rustling or disease today, but they have resorted to crop farming. They are within. So the governors decided that first, when we enter, enumerate, and those that are cropping have to remain there. You also give them the same support as you give to the pastoralists. So in Gongoshi now, 190 families, we have to take the portion of the land that they are farming. But what the plan will do, today they are farming across different parts of the gazetted grazing reserve. Once we know the average size of land they are using, is to carve a specific area and keep them together in a modernized agriculture for their crop production. So nobody should be displaced. This is the decision the governors took at NEC. Whoever is there today should receive the same support as we also settle our pastoralists, because the source of conflict really is when the cattle stray into crop farms. So if you can modernize it and demarcate and keep the cattle away from the crop farm, the crop farmers and the pastoralists are not in conflict.
Okay, let's turn to Secretary of Mietiala. One of the major benefits, from all of this should be production of healthier animals, added value, and of course promotion of peaceful coexistence. Now, many Nigerians will be wondering, because in the last couple of years, Nigerians began to experience AK-47 carrying herders. Some are said to be foreigners because they don't even speak Nigerian language. They tend to have exacerbated, the herder-farmer clashes across the nation. Now, how are your members going to handle these infiltrators, even if they're legally allowed to operate in Nigeria? Do you have a mechanism whereby you'll be able to know the difference between your members in Nigeria and those that are from other parts of the country who are now making Nigerians believe that every herder, is a criminal?
Well, what you're asking me is more of a responsibility of the government and security agencies. If you consider the porous nature of the country, there is a space that extends to about 2,000 kilometers that has not been taken care of. That is our borders on the northern part of the country, beginning from Sokoto end down to Maiduguri, and it extends to over 2,000 kilometers. And with the ECOWAS protocol on transhumance that has given the rights of movement for all pastoralists in West Africa, they move right from Mali down to Central Africa, passing through Nigeria, and there's nothing you can do about it. It is the government that can put in place checking in mechanisms to check in, to identify those who are coming in and when they are going out. Niger has a system like this, because before you come out of Niger, the Nigerian government has to assess you, know where you are coming from, know where you are going to, how many cows you have, so that when you are coming back, if you pass into Nigeria with 100 cows and you're going back to Nigeria with 200 cows, after 6 months, they definitely know you must have stolen. But in Nigeria, we don't have such things. Our borders are porous. This transhumant pastoralist passes through Nigeria, goes to Cameroon and Central Africa. Sometimes even them without noticing they are in one country, because they have their roads, they have the transhumant routes that they follow.
Now, I'm not stopping you, but Mietiala operates in every part of this country.
Yeah.
Right. And is there no mechanism whereby you will be able to determine who are your members that are operating in a particular area where you're existing?
We can only do that with the cooperation of the government and the security agencies. We cannot operate an association in isolation, because this is something that borders with the security agencies. So and the government of the states. We have been agitating for this. Let us work together and have a sort of checking system for those that are coming in. Let's evolve a model, a system that can enable us know who are coming in and going out, who are the foreign pastoralists and who are the indigenous pastoralists. Before this time, 10 years back, the crisis had been of farmer and pastoralists in this country. When our Katsina State contingent visited the neighboring state in Niger, they had the same complaint that around Maiduguri side, our pastoralists are also passing into Niger to make distractions to them. When we went to complain about the distraction that they are causing into Nigeria and the crisis that they are causing to us, it was then that we realized that the time they released their pastoralists to come into Nigeria was the time that Nigeria is busy cultivating, or have not even started cultivating their farm produce. You know, because of the Sahara there, they cultivate earlier than Nigeria. So immediately after their cultivation, they normally release their pastoralists to come into Nigeria. And this is the time when the Nigerian farmers have not even started cultivating. So that was where the problem was then. But now it has passed this one, because the crisis had assumed a serious dimension, new phenomena coming in of this cattle rustling, banditry, and kidnapping. It's all associated, we believe it's all associated with the foreign pastoralists, because of the porous borders, because no system of checking in for them. So nobody knows how many of them are coming in and going out of the country. And because of the ECOWAS protocol, we believe even the federal government's hands are tied in stopping them to come into Nigeria. But then we have to come up with a system that will help us identify who are coming in as foreigners and going out as foreigners. As it is now, we don't have it, and as an association, we are handicapped. We can't work without the help, the support of the security and government.
I guess.
Let him come in here, because, Ruga, are you considering such foreign pastoralists in what you're doing? Are they captured in this initiative?
Thank you very much, Kilian. First and foremost, I agree with you that we are aware of the ECOWAS protocol for free movement of persons and goods. But the very protocol, Kilian, says that every member state should institute mechanisms, as the secretary said, for stopping, identification, and holding, what we call quarantine stations. And that's what he says is operating in Niger. In Nigeria, we need quarantine stations. And in the protocol, or in the OIE protocols, it even specifies for how long you have to keep an incoming foreign pastoralist or person moving with livestock, to know that A, they are all healthy, B, they have certificate that allows them to enter your country. So it's like saying we're ECOWAS, but you cannot just get up and jump on plane that you are going to Ghana without valid Nigerian passport. And when you arrive there, you are stopped at the airport to receive visa. So the same kind of operation is meant to happen. We are proposing in the next level agenda to also see, as part of implementing this National Livestock Transformation Plan, that we have at least 6 strategic quarantine stations that can hold these people in check. Nasarawa State told us during consultation that there are over 500 paths through which these pastoralists come into Nigeria between Niger and Benin Republic through Nasarawa State. The locals know the routes. So I think the beauty of it is that working with the locals, we have to develop a mechanism together with our pastoralists to institute checks and checking and holding. But we need to do this. And ECOWAS has another policy also that has advised member states to also think of how they can solve these issues long term. So what Nigeria is doing about transformation is also encouraged by ECOWAS. We have to do this and do it well. But building the quarantine stations is the responsibility of the federal and state government, and they just have to do it. Otherwise, we will continue to have this situation.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Kwasari. I guess part of the question Kinsley was trying to ask the Secretary of Mietiala was, since you have it in Kieran, part of since you have it in all the states, you have your association. Is there any way your members can know and say, okay, this person is not our member, or this person, is alien to us, or is someone that we don't know? But then I like Professor Vaughan to actually come in here. The VP just a couple of days had a launch of the livestock transformation plan in your state, Adamawa state. Speak to us how it was, or how it's being, and how you intend to go about its implementation.
Thank you very much. Before I come to that, let me just make a small clarification and technical correction regarding ranching and grazing reserves. They are not mutually exclusive. Ranching simply means a confinement where livestock are reared in an intensive fashion, providing all the inputs. And the grazing reserve, we are now saying, for the system that mobilizes cattle, you can now use the ranch, you can now use the grazing reserve as the area of the confinement for such improved livestock production system. That is one. Two, like Dr. Kwasari said, when the Vice President visited, we were actually conducting an enumeration program, and we're using the N-Power volunteers of Adamawa State to do that. They did an excellent job. What we gave then was an interim report we had just collated through a rapid rural appraisal, and we're analyzing the data. And what we gave then was we had, as at that time, 190 crop farmers in Gongoshi Grazing Reserve, which is one of the 5 grazing reserves that Adamawa State has selected for the NLTP program. It will interest you to know, Dr. Kwasari, that we've actually finished the analysis now. What we have right now, we have about 606 crop farmer households in Gongoshi Grazing Reserve, 606, with a total population of 6,000, giving us an average of 10 people per household. 6,000 is the total number of farmers that we have in Gongoshi Grazing Reserve from 606 households. And for the livestock farmers, we have 1,000 households, in fact 1,051 households, accounting for 10,000 population of human beings. Again, an average of 10 persons per household. That is the current situation of Gongoshi Grazing Reserve, arising from the rapid rural appraisal that we have done. The next step of that is to do a more detailed diagnostic survey and establishment of the situation of that entire grazing reserve. But the results of the rapid rural appraisal has provided us an insight as to what the Gongoshi Grazing Reserve is all about. It is when you do that, you will now know what type of interventions to bring in there to improve the productivity of the animals that are there. And they are living happily. And of course, as the Vice President will testify, both the pastoralists and the arable farmers were living together. In fact, they were dancing together. And it wasn't for show. It was real. And we've gone around the entire 9,500 hectares of that Gongoshi Grazing Reserve. Now, for Adamawa State, we have 69 grazing reserves, 69. And out of the 69, 31 have been gazetted, fully gazetted, and 38 have not been gazetted. The focus of the NLTP is to use the gazetted grazing reserves, which government has control over. So we have as potential grazing reserves for the use of the NLTP in Adamawa State, 31 of them. We cannot use all 31 at the same time. So as a state, we factored in a lot of consideration and came up and selected 5 out of the 31 gazetted grazing reserves. And Gongoshi is one of them. The others are Nasarawa in Jada local government. We have one in Dauchi in Song local government. We have another in Guyaku, in Gombe local government, and we have one in Sorau, in Maiha local government. These 5 gazetted grazing reserves put together provide us 60,000 hectares of land within those 5. So we have available for the implementation of, the pilot implementation of the NLTP in Adamawa State, 60,000 hectares. And we're doing an inventory of the available resources, both human and natural, within those grazing reserves. That is what we are actually doing now. We've just commented that after the Vice President visit. We establish the status of those grazing reserves, know the interventions that are needed, and we also know even the number of livestock that are there. It is on the basis of that, Kirian, that you will now know, okay, what is the carrying capacity of this grazing reserve? How many people can you allow into it? And to increase the number of people that you can allow into it and the cattle that you can allow into it, what do you need to do in it to improve it? And of course, the key thing, like I mentioned in my introductory remarks, is forage, pasture. So there has to be improved pasture. You know, it's not every grass that you see on the street that animals eat that is nutritious. So there has to be improved pasture. And then the next thing is, of course, is water. Water is essential for livestock production. So these are the things that we have earmarked to carry out in Adamawa State. And we are moving in a very stepwise fashion. The blessing here is we are receiving maximum support of the Adamawa State Administration government.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Ruga, you know, the earlier this issue of herder farmer clashes, the earlier they are handled and settled, the better for Nigeria. Because if you think about the insecurity in the country, it's quite hinged on the fact that, well, we have cattle rustlers, we have banditry, we have headers, we also have some headers that carry AK-47 and what have you. So it is interesting, really, we're having this conversation this morning. And I'd like the president of all farmers to come in here before we take a short break. Right. What are the key components of this program that will be beneficial to crop farmers? Because after all said and done, if the crop farmers have not come to terms with herders, just like the Prof told us now that in Adamawa State, already there are gazetted grazing reserves. We have about 7 pilot states now, as the case may be. Do they have such, and how will it ensure that crop farmers have their fair share of this initiative?
And also take along with it the fact that you also were about raising some, you know, reservations or some gray areas you actually wanted to speak to earlier. You can as well go ahead and do that.
Well, a lot of light has been thrown on the earlier things that I want to say, but let me make a categorical statement that this livestock transformation plan is wholly accepted by the farmers, because two pillars in it directly affect what is going on today. The first one is the conflict resolution, because the conflict is affecting both the pastoralists and the crop farmers. And then the second most important of the 6 pillars is the livestock improvement. That is the development aspect. Probably is the last one, but it's very, very important. If you do those 2 judiciously, you are going to have a situation that obtains in Southern Africa and some parts of the UK. Many years ago, I used to attend the Royal Agricultural Show in England. And going from Paddington Station up to Manchester, if you look left and right, you find so many cattle grazing in plush green. They are coming out of ranches owned by people and coming to the open grazing area that even passers-by can graze. That did not happen just like that. If you go to Namibia, for instance, you find exotic goats and other animals that we even go with airplanes to bring into Nigeria. There's so many people, rich people have got so many ranches, they do zero grazing, getting those animals from there. How did they come to be? It is a policy like this. This policy will engender improvement on the livestock development, will mitigate whatever skirmishes we have all around. Of course, banditry, kidnapping, and all that may have other reasons for erupting, but problems between herders and farmers will become a thing of the past. Of course, we all have to collaboratively take action on what is happening in terms of banditry and the other things. But as far as the herders and farmers are concerned, this policy is all-encompassing. We just need to implement it judiciously. The states, and that is where agriculture takes place, should be ready to involve MACBAN, AFAN, traditional rulers, other NGOs, and so many other stakeholders in implementation. It has to be transparent for everybody to feel that they belong in the scheme of things. And this is, I think, very welcome. Nigeria will go forward with this. And you know, there is another policy that probably we have not seen, we have not talked about. The major problem we will have in this country, in this what they call protectionism that we are doing. You know, they are doing limited protectionism now by saying you cannot import food items using forex that you get from the CBN. But mind you, what we have as milk in this country is very small, because our productivity in terms of the milk from the pastoralists is very poor, very low. It will not be okay for Nigerians. So it will even cost more now that we are discouraging giving forex to import any of these things. So it is better for us to implement the livestock transformation plan judiciously to be able to do that.
All right, thank you very much. We just indicate that we're getting your tweets, our viewers, via our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. You can be a part of this conversation. Just tweet at us at our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. If you have questions, you have contributions, you have comments on the issue we're discussing this morning, that's the National Livestock Transformation Plan. Just tweet at us at our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. When we come back from this break, we'll take some of your tweets, and of course our guests are still here in the studio to respond to them.
Well, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria for this Monday. Of course, we are discussing a very pertinent issue this morning. And let's return to Dr. Andrew Kwasari on this. When you talk about implementation, you also talk about funding of this. 2 days ago, we read in the newspaper that 10 billion naira has been earmarked for this. That was denied by the governor of Plateau State, who that was accredited to initially. Now, what is the source of funding for this? Many Nigerians have raised concerns about funding. They're asking, is the federal government going to fund that business? What is the role of governors? You know, especially in the 7 states that's going to do the pilot of this. What is the source of funding of this project?
Thank you, Kiran, for that very important question. So when the policy was developed by the committee members, 10 governors and 2 ministers, the recommendation was to share cost of public funding, where federal government does 80%, and the state governors, states do 20%, in addition to provision of the land which they hold on trust on behalf of their people, the gazetted grazing reserve land, and the manpower that will be needed. And this funding, the initial public spending for this program was earmarked at 100 billion naira in order to attract additional 150 billion thereabout from private equity, donor participation, and other investors. Now, these resources is meant to go in phases to the participating frontline states or pilot states. The government, the public spending in the document is also clearly defined what should be funded by public money, whether from federal 80% or from state 20%, allowing the opportunity for private investors, which in our designing include the pastoralists that will contribute their cattle to participate, or the crop farmers that will contribute their seeds and their labor and everything. But also investors like multinationals that are processing milk in this country or processing beef and all of that, and other local companies that are involved in the livestock value chain, whether it is health provision or feed provision and all of that. So this is how funding is done. What is key is that in the plan, there is no room for spending money at the federal. Just to link up with what the AFAN president said, that the need for us to see a transparent implementation. Federal money, as we recommended in the implementation guideline, is supposed to be sent to the state where the land is, while federal government, through the mechanism of monitoring and evaluation, will hold the states accountable.
Okay.
And galvanizing a team. I was very delighted to hear the AFAN president and the Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders General Secretary speaking about transparency, because what we will have naturally or usually are contracts given out at the federal level. This we must avoid, where the monies must go to the specific site, like what Adamawa is doing. So how it works with the committee members, the 10 governors, is that a state, for instance, Adamawa, has to do all of the work that Professor Voa and his team are doing. Then only after that will they come back with a budget to say this is what we need for our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sites, and then it could be validated by the federal government and team of the type of organization that MACBAN and AFAN are recommending, which I agree with it, to then say, okay, this is the budget for 5 sites in Adamawa, and this money should then be spent at the state level while we hold them accountable by any means.
So what you're saying in essence is that there will not be direct spending or disbursement of this one by the federal government, but rather through the state governments to the people who are held in trust for this implementation.
Yes, because what usually happens is we dole out contracts at the federal government level.
Okay.
Most of these contractors don't even have clue of what needs to be done or where it should be done or what level of consultation. In this case, we should move and hold the state governors accountable. I'm only the secretary to the committee that developed this, but this is what the governors have agreed, because also the governors meet every month at NEC, and that is why you see under the implementation guideline, we said there should be clear metrics for measuring performance. There should be also proxies to show whether Kaduna and Plateau, having received this for their particular sites, how are they doing? So holding this accountability, holding the governors to checks is very critical on whether or not we succeed, because what you should see is that a lot of Nigerians have been galvanized through stakeholder engagement. And if we do anything contrary to what will help them say that we've done it as designed, will also start another problem.
Yeah,
so that accountability is key.
I'm going to come back to that, because the need to assure people, you know, that this means well for them, and because of the controversies that trailed, you know, Ruga and all of that, it is very, very key. And how the fact that everyone has been captured in this National Livestock Transformation Plan.
And again, the assurance is that whatever fund will be disbursed by federal government to the states will be adequately utilized, you know, for the purpose it was meant, you know, because, of course, you know that implementation, as you know it, Ruga, in all ramifications of our endeavor in Nigeria, has always been very difficult. And as a matter of fact, we have not really done well when it comes to implementing well-blended policies, well-articulated policies. And I can assure you that if you are able to implement this program, Nigerians will ever be happy for it because
Yeah.
it will settle a lot of matters. All the banditry, kidnapping we're talking about, all take place in the bush. That is why many people make reference to herders all the time. They're all bush activities, bush criminal activities. Right? So that's why it's very important.
Nigerians, sorry, can I tell you that one of my recent encounters, some Nigerians walk up to me and told me that, how sure are you that the governors will not divert this fund to their other activities? And for me, this is palpable concern of Nigerians. So what we then need to is galvanizing, and I'm so happy that Afan and Macban are thinking in this way, galvanizing all stakeholders, just as we did during the interaction, civil society organization, NGOs and everything, and making available, and thank you, Prof, for even telling me now that we have even more detail of the reality in Gongoshi. We must keep it in the face of Nigeria, and Nigerians must demand accountability. If Nigerians don't demand accountability, when things are done without, it's not done in the open, and there is no robust conversation and discussion around it, people get away with so many things. Contracts just pass by and people just pocket money, and nobody is accountable.
The federal government also
we just need to do it.
The federal government would also, like just as you said, from time to time, would demand accountability from the state governors. That I was going to raise that with you because thank God you've just raised it, because the fear of a lot of people would be if you just does. We've seen instances where we're still talking about funds for local government. Some local governments still now that are under, state governors, they have refused to disburse the local governments, But then let's take the tweets that we have via our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. This first one is from Law Alpha. It says, another Ruga redrafted to reduce the tension generated when it was initially introduced. The initiative is laudable as it would create jobs for the less privileged, a set of the population and other economic opportunities therein.
From Comrade Alaji Ngara, plan by federal government on livestock is a good development. We have abundant land for grazing. Government should provide lands for grazing of animals to overcome the security challenges.
And Akeju Olagbaju says we should not be talking of livestock plan in the presidency when the Federal Ministry of Agriculture has developed a broad livestock development agenda up to 2010 to 20. If we want agriculture to succeed in all different interventions, they should be harmonized under the ministry.
Livestock business is not supposed to be regarded as a national issue. Government should handle it with caution.
And this one is from Makejo. Like we said, the Ministry of Agriculture should implement the livestock agenda for self-sufficiency in livestock production, such as milk and its derivatives, and the leather from home industries, and exploit also addresses rehabilitation of grazing areas.
Now, Festus Akimbreo, our federal government's plan to establish national livestock facilities should be supported by Nigerians. The new livestock system will ensure that large numbers of animals are housed in a designated area. If the plan is well implemented, it should enhance security and increase beef production.
And Law Office says the launching of the program in Adamawa State by the Vice President was a huge success, and it would be expected that all the states of the Federation should embrace the laudable initiative as it helps to exterminate farmer herders clashes.
But Haruna Adamu, what matters is implementation, as Nigeria is good in designing policies, but poor in execution. However, it's a good development, and if we well managed, it could build a prosperous economy and provide for the basic needs of the population.
Dilly Jack Solomon tweet says, kudos to the government for improving the 1 trillion naira for approving 1 trillion naira to the National Livestock Transmission Plan. But there is a need to go back to the fundamentals and have government serve only as accelerators rather than sole funders. Livestock management as part of the agricultural value chain is still a private business venture. It should remain so.
Now, from Sani Michael or Makoji, the name National Livestock Plan is a more friendly name compared to Ruga. With the Vice President inaugurating inaugural speech, the program sounds as a good omen to Nigerian economy, and I feel is an opportunity for the federal government to enhance and empower program as those beneficiaries can drive the plan. And that's the much we have for now from Nigerians who are taking part in this conversation from their living room. So we thank you very much for contributing to the conversation. And now, gentlemen, it's about time for you to give us your final thoughts on this very important topic. And I'd like the Secretary General of NLTP to start this.
Well, my final thought will be on the implementation. You know, there has to be, first I would have to appreciate the government of Adamawa State for having a very good implementation procedure. What I've heard is really encouraging, and I hope all the other participating states will emulate what is happening in Adamawa State. On the implementation, there has to be a clear implementation structure in both the national and the states. And there has to be a very clear implementation procedure, just like Adamawa, what Adamawa State had done. And the roles of all stakeholders must be clearly spelled out. And in addition, the smallholder farmers must also be carried along so that we can avoid this strategy of commons as it happens in the grazing reserves, where even the participators in the grazing reserve don't cooperate among themselves, where there's a competition on the rights of land and what have you. Let's try to avoid this, and let's also have future focus, because what will happen to the other smallholders who are in the other grazing reserves when you develop this first one? So we will have focus on how to also engage them in their own grazing reserves. Then the need assessment. The Adamawa must also enhance the needs assessment structure so that it will incorporate all the other needs and all the other grazing reserves that are not involved in this scheme.
All right, let's get to your closing thought, Professor Van.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are happy for the commendation that we are receiving as Adamawa State. This will spur us to do more. One thing that we have done clearly is to make sure that we put in place, a governance structure that mimics what we have at the national level. We have, for instance, a steering committee on the National Livestock Transformation Plan at the state level. Then we also carried out an intensive sensitization, starting in fact with the traditional institution. So this actually gave us a path, to move on. Then of course, like we said, this is a national program, but the federal government is only acting as a catalyst. This is actually going to be state-driven and more of public sector-driven. What the federal government, and we have to understand, what the federal government is doing is actually to provide a launching pad. But the entire program, if you look at the implementation plan of this program, is actually private sector driven, because agriculture, as a matter of fact, is private sector driven.
All right, Kabir Ibrahim, President of All Farmers Association. I'm happy that the Mietala people are also under your umbrella.
Yes. Well, I think all other participating states should model what is happening in Adamawa. More than anything, and on a humorous note, I would like to say that the conflict resolution component of this livestock transformation plan is very critical for at least northern Nigeria, and now more importantly in the northwest. I've seen some governors in the northwest risking their lives to go and talk with the bandits, kidnappers, and supposed pastoralists. To be able to reduce what is happening now or completely ameliorate it, we have to implement this livestock transformation policy.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Kwasari, how do you allay the fears of some people who have had issues with Ruga? What do they need to know about this plan?
First of all, NLTP is not Ruga. And while NLTP was long in its plan, Ruga came. So it's not that Ruga, like the said, the person said, is Ruga remodeled or whatever. No, it remodified or redefined. No, NLTP has taken over 18 months to design. So all this while, NLTP work was ongoing. So it's a clear plan, I would encourage Nigerians, it's a public document, it's out there. I think I would encourage any NTA to put it on your website, the strategy and the implementation guideline, so that Nigerians can read and understand what it is. I think this is it. Well, to close for me, I think what is key is that the National Economic Council, under the leadership of the Vice President, must remain focused in working with the state, particularly insisting that it's only when there is clarity on what the state needs to do with every penny of this plan should money be made available to the state, and there is a clear framework to also monitor by independent stakeholders, not by the state governors and their team. Even as good as the Adamawa Steering Committee and Implementation Team is, we cannot trust them to monitor. M&E has to be a framework outside of the state that will deal with it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Gentlemen, it's been a very healthy conversation on a very important issue in this country. I like the two components, that of a human capital development and a conflict resolution. It's very important. And of course, Ibrahim raised that. Gentlemen, we thank you so much for sharing your time, your thoughts with us this morning.
On that note, we want to thank Dr. Andrew Kwasari, who is a Senior Special Assistant to the President on Agriculture, Office of the Vice President. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you, Ruga.
And also Professor Ambrose Vaughan is the Chairman, Adamawa State Livestock Transformation Director, National Animal Production Research Institute also. Thank you very much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for
And Baba Otman Nglazama, he is National Secretary, Mieti Alakato Breeders Association of Nigeria, MACBAN. Thank you very much for your thoughts and time on the program.
Thank you.
And finally, Kabir Ibrahim is a National President, All Farmers Association of Nigeria. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on the program.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right, and that's it on Good Morning Nigeria today, where we've been discussing the National Livestock